Hello everyone, I'm Zenith Rule, and welcome back to History of One Piece, where I chronicle, review, debate, and analyze each individual arc of One Piece. It has been a very long time since I last uttered those words. A few years back, I decided to create a flagship series for my channel. My idea at the time was to take something I really loved and was passionate about and delve into it using analysis and critical thinking. Back then, my biggest influences were Linkara with his History of Power Rangers series, Jacob Chapman with his Digimon retrospective, and SF Debris with his analytic reviews of Star Trek. These three reviewers showed me that there was another style you could use to make videos instead of the caustic critic format that everyone was using back then. I incorporated bits and pieces of these styles into my own and created History of One Piece, a show to analyze each individual story arc of One Piece. History of One Piece has quickly become the most popular thing I have ever done on YouTube, with one episode reaching over 20,000 views and counting. However, as the popularity of the series grew, I also got the attention of Funimation and Toei Animation. Funimation holds the American distribution rights for the show and creates the English dub, while Toei produces the original Japanese version. At first, I received a few automated claims from Funimation, but as soon as I brought this to their attention, they released all the claims at once. Ever since, Funimation has been a big help with the show. My contact at Funimation, God's Will, is simply fantastic and will always help you with anything you need. Toei, on the other hand, is simply horrible to deal with. For the past few years, I've been dealing with non-stop takedown claims from Toei, who just doesn't seem to care about fair use or licensing in America. Now, I've won all the copyright battles they've sent my way, since it's Funimation's job and not their jurisdiction, but they just keep sending more claims. These copyright battles typically last around 3 months each time and prevent me from posting new episodes, so my ability to produce History of One Piece has been drastically reduced as of late. After a few years of this, I decided to place the series on hold while I work on other projects. You gotta understand, this is my favorite series to produce, but I was just so stressed out trying to produce each individual episode with Toei looming overhead that it just became a chore to do, and honestly, after a while, it became something that I dreaded with each passing video, simply because every single time I could predict what was going to happen. They would take it down, after a few months I would get it back up, and I wouldn't receive any compensation for it, and they would take all my money. After taking some time to relax a bit and hiring editors to help out, I've decided to give History of One Piece another shot. The previous scripts for each episode will be mostly unchanged, with the exception of adding in something I may have missed or streamlining things to sound better. And, of course, having better audio will always help. There are also things I may view differently these days, so the script will be updated to reflect that. With all of that being said, welcome my friends to the new and improved History of One Piece. This is my last shot at doing this. I'm really hoping Toei does not, fuck with this like they normally do, but this is my last shot. I'm going for it. Let's do this. History of One Piece.
So come on board and bring along all your hopes and dreams. Together we will find everything that we're looking for. There's always room for you if you wanna be my friend. We are on the cruise. We are.
Now, those of you who live in America are probably wondering what One Piece is exactly. One Piece is a manga series created in 1997 by one Eiichiro Oda. Oda began his manga career at the age of 17 when his cowboy one-shot Wanted won second place in the coveted Tezuka Awards. Thanks to this one-shot, Oda got a job at Weekly Shonen Jump and worked as an assistant to Shinobu Kaitani, Masaya Tokuhiro, and Nobuhiro Watsuki, three of the big names in manga at the time. While working under Watsuki, Oda released two pirate-themed one-shot stories in Shonen Jump, both called Romance Dawn, which would eventually lead to the creation of One Piece. One Piece proved immensely popular with Japanese audiences and quickly rose to the #1 spot in Shonen Jump, and it's easy to see why. The concept of One Piece is a very simple one. You take a crew of pirates, give them superpowers, and have them fight against hundreds of corrupt pirates and marines. However, while the concept is simplistic, the execution is simply fantastic. One Piece isn't just about a group of pirates, it's about the wondrous world that these pirates inhabit. It's not just about the protagonists, it's about the marines, the world government, Council of Kings, Gorosei, Revolutionary Army, Shichibukai, Yonko, and the literally hundreds of other characters that inhabit this world. Every single character is important, and every single character gets a chance to shine. Now, that may seem a bit overwhelming at first, but Oda doesn't just introduce dozens of characters at a time. We spend the beginning of the manga learning about the main characters, and slowly the rest of the world is revealed to us, and we get a chance to care about each of these characters. Oda makes you want to learn more about this world and rewards you for doing so. With that being said, it's not exactly surprising that One Piece became the most popular manga in Japan. In fact, One Piece is the highest selling manga in the history of Weekly Shonen Jump and ranks at #1 for the best selling manga in history, last I checked. It is unprecedented for a fledgling mangaka or manga creator to receive this level of success, especially considering the fact that, other than a few one-shots, One Piece is the only manga that Oda has worked on. It speaks to the quality of the manga itself that it's been running for this long and still retains the #1 spot in Shonen Jump. But anyway, enough about the manga, let's talk about the anime. In 1999, Toei Animation released an animated version of One Piece. While a few things were changed from the manga version, the anime was received incredibly well in Japan and still continues to this day. Unfortunately, the anime did not have the same reception in America. In 2004, 4Kids Entertainment acquired the license to distribute One Piece in North America and began to release a highly edited version of the show, which was panned by critics and fans of the original anime. In an interview with Mark Kirk, the vice president of digital media for 4Kids, Kirk explained that 4Kids had acquired One Piece as part of a package deal with other anime, and the company did not actually watch any of the series before acquiring it. Once 4Kids realized that One Piece would not work with their intended demographic, they decided to edit it into a more child-oriented series until they had an opportunity to legally drop the license. This decision has ruined the reputation of One Piece in America and turned 4Kids into something of a laughingstock. The changes that they made to the show were simply laughable. One of the main characters in the show is constantly smoking a cigarette, but that was edited to look like a lollipop in post. Several characters in the show constantly smoke cigars and were edited to always just have their mouth open for no reason whatsoever. Guns were changed to water pistols and various other harmless objects to make it more kid-friendly, but it was done in such a haphazard manner. For example, in close-up shots, guns were censored and changed, but you can still see their guns in faraway shots. In one episode, a pistol was even changed to a spring-loaded hammer. I just What? That doesn't even make sense. What? Granted, I wouldn't be quite as upset with these changes if they didn't affect the overall story so much. I mean, 4Kids made a ton of changes to Yu-Gi-Oh! And I loved that as a kid, but the difference is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't revolve entirely around the darker elements of the story. The main plot is about card games, and that's intact in the 4Kids version. One Piece, on the other hand, revolves around bloody pirates. There's guns in most episodes because of the time period and because most pirates have bloody guns. They're bloody pirates. It's part of their job. Let me be perfectly clear here. One Piece is a dark series. It deals with mature elements that simply don't work for the audience 4Kids was catering to. I mean, in the manga, one character is forced to eat his own leg to avoid starving after getting stranded in the middle of the ocean. That should tell you how dark this show gets, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. In addition to these visual changes, they flat out removed entire story arcs from the show in order to skip ahead to the better arcs, quote unquote. Something that people have been telling me that I should have done in History of One Piece a long time ago. Now, I understand the mentality, but skipping over story arcs makes One Piece very hard to follow. You see, One Piece is a show that loves to reuse past elements and characters all the time. Every single arc has some small importance, even if it doesn't seem like it at the time, and most of these arcs are referenced later down the line. Hell, characters from Drum Island are now reappearing in the manga almost 500 chapters later. Even some of the filler arcs for the series are important to watch, considering they're created from the chapter title mini arcs in the manga. In a large portion of manga chapters, Oda uses a title image that showcases what's going on in the rest of the world, and creates these mini arcs that explain things that will also be relevant later down the line, but don't need to be explained fully just yet. So those filler arcs are canon to the manga and should be watched to fully understand the story. When you look at it closely, there's only a handful of stories in the anime that are purely filler, and somehow even these stories serve to flesh out the characters a bit more. Well, with the exception of the Apis arc, but we will get to that one day, I promise. You just can't skip much of this story without getting confused later down the line. 4Kids didn't seem to understand this and aired only 104 of the 143 episodes that they had acquired. 3 filler arcs and 2 main story arcs were just completely missing. I remember when they were airing Drum Island on TV and feeling even back then like I missed something important because characters kept referencing events that we never saw. We got no context for why they went to Drum Island to find a doctor, since that was explained in the previous arc, and the villain of that arc just shows up later and we have no idea who this guy is, but the characters react as if they all knew him from some previous encounter. It was a mess. A complete and utter mess. I'll touch upon more of these changes later, but suffice to say, these changes did not help the show. In March of 2006, the 4Kids dub was cancelled due to lost profits, possibly because they were in the middle of Sky Island, which isn't a very well regarded arc on its own, to be fair. Despite my misgivings now, I was rather upset at the time. One Piece was one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. Admittedly, I liked Naruto quite a bit more back then, but I was really fond of One Piece. Every Friday night, I would watch this anime block that came on before Adult Swim that would air shows such as Prince of Tennis, Zatch Bell, Duel Masters, Bobobo, yeah, that was a weird one, and One Piece. While I missed episodes of the other anime in the block back then, I made sure to never, ever miss a single episode of One Piece. I simply didn't care about the censorship back then. I loved the world, I loved the characters, I loved the battles, I loved how weird it all was. Looking back now, what we got was really not great compared to the original product, but I was really upset when it was cancelled. The final episode of the 4Kids series ended on a cliffhanger right before one of the best battles in the history of the show, and we were given no idea if the series would ever return. It was simply torture. I eagerly awaited any news of the show returning, but it would take quite a while. In 2007, Funimation acquired the One Piece license and proceeded to dub the rest of the series from Sky Island onwards. Admittedly, I wasn't too fond of it at the time, mostly because I was so used to the previous voice actors, and I didn't think some of the new voice actors fit the look and feel of the characters. However, these days I regard the Funimation dub quite highly, and I'm extremely glad they took over. In addition to continuing the dub from Sky Island, Funimation also went back to the beginning of the show and dubbed every single episode the way it was meant to be, uncut. Every episode is uncut and uncensored, bringing back the feel of the original Japanese show, and they finally showed us the lost arcs of One Piece, allowing English fans to understand what happened for the first time. Funimation has put a lot of time and effort into their dub, and it really does show. Despite any criticisms I may present in this series, I honestly am rather impressed with how they handle the show and their continued promotion of One Piece in America. Still, the damage done by 4Kids is not so easily undone. This is where I come in. I am going to view every single episode of One Piece. I'm going to go arc by arc and explain to you why One Piece is an amazing anime. I'm going to examine the highs and the lows, the mysteries and the revelations, the facts and the speculation. Welcome, everyone, once again to History of One Piece. Let's dive into my favorite long-running anime. Now, the first thing to talk about with any long-running anime is the opening theme. There are many people who just skip through the theme song or look at it as superfluous marketing, but opening themes are extremely important. For many people, the opening theme of an anime is the first thing they see of the series, and in that regard, a great opening theme can make people excited to see the series itself. I can think of dozens of different opening themes that were stylish or creative enough to get me into the anime itself. When I first saw Smile Bomb, the opening theme of Yu Yu Hakusho, I was immediately drawn in and watched the entire series simply because of that opening theme. Opening themes are very powerful and can make or break a franchise. Since One Piece is such a long-running series, it makes sense that the show has had numerous opening themes over the years. While not all of them work quite as well as intended, they are all visually creative and really get you excited to explore the world of One Piece. The first opening theme, We Are, is a personal favorite of mine and provides an excellent introduction to the series as a whole. It may not be as slick or stylistic as some modern anime openings, but the transitions are very creative and it captures the atmosphere of the show perfectly. It introduces us to all of the main characters at this point in the show, and it makes us want to learn more about them by showing off some of their skills. It also shows quick-cut images of the villains that these pirates will face on their journey. Now, some people complain that the villains are showcased a bit too early, but I don't really see the problem in this opening. Yes, it may take away a bit of the mystery, but simply knowing what a villain looks like doesn't mean you know what the villain is going to be like. The opening theme is supposed to get you excited to see the show and see these villains, and personally, I think it does a great job of that. The song itself is just plain awesome. It's incredibly upbeat, inspiring, and evokes a sense of adventure. Whenever I listen to this theme, I want to find a pirate crew of my own and sail across the seven seas. This song feels like a love letter to the glory days of Francis Drake and Ferdinand Magellan, and it fits well with the tone of the series overall. The opening also does a great job of introducing the premise of the series. Gold Roger, the most famous pirate who ever lived, was the Pirate King. He had it all: wealth, fame, power, and the most awesome mustache the world has ever seen. Just before his execution, Roger spoke his final words.
You want my treasure? You can have it. I left everything I gathered together in one place. Now you just have to find it.
With the promise of Roger's treasure, pirates from across the world set sail to seek their fortune and make their dreams come true. And thus, the great age of piracy begins. This is all explained in the first 30 seconds of the opening, and immediately it immerses you into the world of One Piece. I'll touch more upon Roger later down the line when we actually learn a bit more about him, but for now, all we need to know is laid out for us in the very beginning. He's an inspiration to pirates everywhere and a constant nuisance for the Marines. Another thing to note about the theme song is that it isn't just used as an opening theme. We Are has been referred to as the theme song for the first half of One Piece because it's constantly used as background music whenever the main characters do something epic or just do something in general. In this way, We Are becomes an anthem for the main characters and makes you root for them even more. I'll point out specific instances of this when it comes up in the show. Overall, I think We Are is one of the best opening themes in One Piece. It achieves everything it sets out to do, introducing us to the premise of the series and getting us excited to delve into this world of pirates. In addition to the Japanese version of We Are, we also have to discuss the two English versions of this opening. I suppose we should start with the most infamous opening in the history of the show, the 4Kids One Piece rap. Oh boy, where do I even begin with this? Well, let's start off with the good. First of all, the opening narration in the One Piece rap is the best out of all three versions of this opening. Frederick B. Owens, the 4Kids voice of Gold Roger, is simply perfect for the role. He has this voice that commands your attention and keeps you invested in every single word that he says. In that same vein, Eric Stewart, the opening narrator, has this energy that complements incredibly well with Owens. Both of them draw you into the anime in that 30 seconds with very little effort. When Toonami was advertising the show way back when, they used that opening narration in their preview, and I simply needed to see the show after watching. No joke, I wrote down when the show was gonna premiere and set a timer just so I didn't miss it. That is the power of fantastic voice acting. Then we get to the rap itself. Okay, I'm just gonna say this right now. When I was young, I loved the One Piece rap. No joke, I thought that this was one of the best anime openings at that time. Granted, I was only 14 at the time, and I also thought that Nickelback was the coolest band ever, so my judgment was not exactly refined at the time, should I say. Yeah, I should have been listening to Jesse McCartney instead. In any case, I think what I liked about the One Piece rap back then was the catchy beat and the presentation. They don't change the animation at all, so the transitions and awesome pirate antics are still there, but instead of an old school adventure theme, we had this hip-hop track that got you excited to watch the series. And you know, it really did work at the time. I hate to admit it, but it did. For the target audience they were aiming for, a rap opening does work better at drawing you in as compared to the original, which kids may find boring today. I can totally see kids passing on the series if it had used the original opening theme at the time. I mean, just look at Naruto's original opening. Instead of Rocks, which is rather slow and not really the best opening of the series, we received a more rocking and energetic theme that drew us in better. Rocks, unfortunately, doesn't work as well for an American audience, and 4Kids execs made the same kind of decision with One Piece. It should be noted that 4Kids created another version of the theme song that was shown in promotional material and closely resembled the original We Are, but was changed before the show aired. I'm not entirely sure why it was changed, since my research has turned up nothing on this front, but I suspect they wanted to go with the trend of the time. Instead of straight dubbing the opening and having the lyrics not really match up well with the song, they wanted to create something that they could have better control over and would better resonate with the kids. They did the same thing for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I have to admit, that worked extremely well. The problem is that, when audiences got older, we began to realize that the One Piece rap has a lot of problems. First of all, why a rap song, of all things? Rock was really big at the time and would have made a lot more sense. Pirates are associated with metal or rock anyway, so that makes sense. Rap, not so much. Anime is not gangsta. Anime is very not gangsta. Back then, liking anime would get you bullied and laughed at as a kid. I know because I was one of the few kids in my high school that watched anime, and boy was I ostracized for it at the time. When I wore my Naruto headband during class, nobody looked at me and said, "Oh, Zen, you're totally a gangsta from the Hidden Leaf Village." No, that didn't happen. They thought I looked stupid, or they watched the show themselves but refused to admit it for fear of being teased like I was. It just baffles me that they went with this specific direction considering the stigma at the time. Sure, nowadays anime is much more mainstream, with actual rappers watching Death Note and loving these shows, and entire YouTube channels with millions of followers simply dedicated to reviewing anime, but back then, if you liked One Piece, you most likely kept it to yourself as you blasted Linkin Park and tried to forget how much you hated your classmates. So yeah, going with rap was a very, very poor choice. Now, I have heard some amazing Japanese rap opening themes for anime such as Hero's Comeback, the first opening theme of Naruto Shippuden, but the key difference is in the presentation. The One Piece rap is not presented seriously. It is lighthearted and goofy, and rap really clashes with that aesthetic. Speaking of which, the lyrics are just plain awful. Not only are they cheesy as all hell, but man, they are just lame. You start off with that amazing opening narration, and then all of a sudden it's just yayo, yayo. What does that even mean? I have no clue, and as a kid, I thought it was gayo gayo, which doesn't make sense either, but what do you expect when you make up nonsense words for the theme song? It gets a bit better with the dream in, don't give it up portion, because that fits well with the aesthetic of One Piece, and everyone does have a dream in the series, but it just goes downhill after that. The pirate whose eye on it, he'll sing. I'll be king of the pirates. I'm gonna be king. This is trying way too hard to be thug when it just plain isn't. And then there's the yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum line. That is a horrible pun. That pun physically pains me to say every single time, and my entire job is to create bad puns. But man, this is like the all might of bad puns. It goes beyond plus ultra. It goes beyond the limits of what should be done with humor and punches you in the gut with its delivery. The rest of the One Piece rap is more of the same type of bad writing that makes this impossible for me to recommend now that I'm old enough to know better. Honestly, the biggest issue that I have are the lyrics themselves and how seriously they try to take themselves in a show that talks about deep important topics like slavery, abuse, death, dismemberment, and more. It just does not fit, and the more you know about One Piece, the more you can see this is an insult to the show. I know it still has its share of fans. If you like it, that's fine. I won't take that away from you. I just don't think it's a good opening at all. Aside from the first 30 seconds, this is one opening I want history to forget, even if the Legion of Fans doesn't want me to. With that being said, Weebee, a group of voice actors that create anime covers, made their own version of the One Piece rap that is simply amazing. I mean, they got freaking Joel McDonald and Alejandro Saab to work on this, and it kicks so much ass.
His name is Luffy.
That's Smoky D.
Gonna be king of the pirates. He's made of rubber.
How did that happen?
Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum.
Yayo.
His name's Zolo, he's just like a samurai. And a L-A-D-Y, Nami's not shy. Usopp's doing that marksman thing. And Sanji's cooking for the would-be king. Yayo.
So, I guess something good did come out of this, but man, did it take a while to make this presentable. Honestly, if the Weebee version was used for the 4Kids dub, I wouldn't have much problem with it, because while the lyrics are still the same, the presentation makes me forget about them entirely and allows me to focus on the amazing vocal performances. So yeah, check out the Weebee version if you get the chance. It is that good. Finally, we have the opening to the Funimation dub, sung by Vic Mignogna, the voice of Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist, in addition to plenty of other roles in high-profile anime. Let's get the problems out of the way first. This is by far the weakest opening narration out of all three versions. Bill Jenkins just does not have the energy needed to narrate this opening. Once again, this is the first thing you see when you start watching One Piece. You need something to grab your attention, and unfortunately, Bill Jenkins just doesn't do that here. It's not bad, but it certainly is lackluster. In that same vein, I really don't like Sean Hennigan as Gold Roger. He just seems far too old for the character and doesn't have the commanding voice the Pirate King needs. I really hope he improves later on in the show, because right now, I'm not a big fan of this performance. With that being said, the song itself is fantastic. Dubbing opening themes in anime is always problematic because of the language barrier. Japanese has many more syllables than English, so when you try to translate a sentence using the same music, it can often come across as awkward. The timing will be off in some cases, or in other cases, you'd have to add in more lines to fill in the gaps. A good example of this is the difference between Kingdom Hearts 1's presentation and Kingdom Hearts RE Chain of Memories on the PlayStation 3. In Kingdom Hearts 1, they completely redid all the lip flaps for the lines so everything matches up.
So, I shall release you now, princess. Complete the keyhole with your power. Open the door
Lead me into everlasting darkness.
However, in Ari Chain of Memories, while they got good voice actors, they didn't redo the lip flaps for all the characters, so the English voice actors had to match the Japanese dialogue, and honestly, it feels very off.
Seriously? Me too. One look at this castle, and I just knew. Our very best friends. They're here.
You have line delivery that is okay, but it just comes across as awkward sometimes. Sometimes there's unnecessary pauses. Sometimes there's things that just don't match up with the lip flaps. And even if you get very good voice actors to do this, it's not always going to match up. In many cases, anime dubs will simply change the song to better fit with the target English demographic, much like in, say, Yu-Gi-Oh! And 4Kids One Piece, but the best openings somehow translate everything without losing what made the original opening great. Yu Yu Hakusho somehow managed to do this with not only Smile Bomb, but all of the ending themes as well. If you listen to the Japanese and English tracks, they are nearly identical and are equally awesome. Along those same lines, the Funimation version of We Are is just perfect. While I will admit there is one line of the song that's a tad slower than the original, the point in the song where they say Sugaseba E, for the most part, this captures the spirit of the Japanese perfectly. Vic is a perfect fit for this song, and I honestly have no problems with the song itself. I do wish that they had better opening narration and a better Gold Roger, but this is miles better than the One Piece rap. I've also heard that the German opening is pretty good too. I haven't seen it myself and I won't really be talking about it now, but if I do see it in the future, I'll let you know what I think. With all that being said, let's dive right into the first arc of One Piece, the Alvida arc. While this isn't the official classification of the story arc, I'm in the minority who doesn't like to lump the first 3 episodes of One Piece into a singular arc. Personally, I like to think of the first episode of One Piece as a standalone arc. While there are a few references to things explored in the next 2 episodes, episode 1 has a separate antagonist and a separate feel altogether. So while the first 3 episodes are officially known as the Romance Dawn arc on the One Piece wiki, I'm splitting them into the Alvida arc and the Captain Morgan arc respectively. While this may not seem important now, it is important to pay individual attention to this arc given just how much is foreshadowed here. The Alvida arc tells us a lot about the main characters through subtext alone and foreshadows many future events in the series. It may not seem like a lot happens in this arc, but trust me, there are concepts hinted at in this episode that are still being explored to this day. The episode opens up to a circle of seagulls hovering over a large whirlpool. As the camera pans over to the side, we see a cruise ship sailing dangerously close to the swirling torrent of death. As the ship coasts on by, some sailors on deck spot a barrel floating in the water. Meanwhile, inside the ship, the passengers dance to classical music, and the captain dooms the ship to death and destruction. Yeah, this must be the guy who said the Titanic was unsinkable. This is really bad luck on ships, guys. I hope you know this. As the captain continues to spout nonsense, we zoom in on a young woman with orange hair. She gazes out the window at a small island in the distance. Now, it's never stated why she's looking at this specific island, but I do have a theory. I won't state it just yet, but if you pay close attention, I think you can figure it out on your own. Anyway, a passenger asks her to dance, and we transition back to the deck of the ship. While 2 of the sailors hoist the barrel out of the water, a 3rd sailor in the crow's nest spots a pirate ship off the starboard bow. The pirate ship launches an all-out attack, firing cannonballs all around the ship. The passengers all start to panic, running in every direction. That is, all except for the woman with orange hair. The ship continues to launch a barrage of cannon fire, and we're finally introduced to Captain Alvida. My eyes, the goggles do nothing. We are also introduced to Alvida's cabin boy, Kobe. Now, I'm going to touch upon Kobe in a little bit, but for now, all we know about him is that he's a coward working under Alvida. As Alvida continues to assault the cruise ship, we see the barrel roll down a flight of stairs and into the hold of the ship. Alvida's crew boards the cruise ship, and we begin to see why the passengers are running like frightened children. While they may look silly, Alvida's crew is seriously intimidating, especially when you consider that the passengers have probably never been in a battle before. This is a cruise ship. It's simply not equipped to fight off a crew of pirates. As the pirates begin to loot the ship, we see just how cowardly Kobe really is. He is terrified of Alvida, so he does anything she tells him to do, but he's just as terrified of attacking the cruise ship. At this point in the story, Kobe seems like a pretty useless character. He's easily manipulated by everyone else around him, and he's too afraid to do anything about it. However, as we will soon see, everybody is important in One Piece, and even young Kobe will have his own part to play. Alvida and her crew gather the passengers together, and they demand all their valuables. At the same time, the orange-haired woman changes into stealth mode. While the bandana does look good on her, I really wonder how she managed to tie it so fast. Was she wearing a wig? Well, anyway, with the rest of the pirates busy, Kobe sneaks down into the hold to avoid having to fight. As he rummages through the hold, he finds the mystery barrel that keeps popping up in the episode. Meanwhile, Orange Hair sneaks over to Alvida's ship and takes out the guard like a boss. Back on the cruise ship, Larry, Moe, and Curly search the hold and find Kobe pushing the mystery barrel. After some bullying, the pirates persuade Kobe to let them drink the wine in the barrel. Boy, are they going to be surprised when they find out that it's been censored to apple juice. One of the pirates cracks his knuckles and gets ready to smash open the barrel. Now, I'm no scientist. Far from it, but wouldn't smashing the barrel open like that just spill the wine everywhere? I'm probably wrong, but it just seems like a very stupid way to open a barrel. Well, despite all logic, Curly winds up for the punch, and then this happens. This scene is simply brilliant. It tells us so much without having to explain it outright. First of all, we're finally introduced to Monkey D. Luffy, the main character of One Piece. We're shown here just how strong Luffy really is. He's able to knock out one of Alvida's stronger henchmen without even realizing it, and he can break through swords with relative ease, but he has more than just physical strength. He has confidence in himself and his abilities. When the pirates attack him, he doesn't flinch and he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't even treat them as a threat. He simply deals with the pirates and goes on his merry way. We also see that Luffy is extremely carefree and a bit clueless. The second that he wakes up, he bursts out of the barrel and bellows that he had an amazing nap. He doesn't notice that he knocked out one of the pirates and doesn't really care when the pirates say that it's his fault. When the pirates take out their swords, he ignores them and instead asks Kobe if he has any food. The wording of the scene is also very important to me. Luffy asks the pirates who they are, but when they don't answer him, he doesn't answer them. The pirates don't show him courtesy, so he doesn't show it to them. He shows concern for the pirate lying on the ground, but all they care about is placing the blame on Luffy. Luffy's Luffy's kindness is rewarded with disdain, so he simply ignores them. When the pirates try to attack him, he doesn't hurt them, but destroys their weapons instead. Unarmed and beaten, they again ask Luffy who he is, and he finally answers. You see, Luffy doesn't view anyone as his enemies, but instead he sees potential allies. This idea will continue throughout the rest of the anime. This simple introduction tells us more about Luffy's personality in 1 minute than most anime do in an hour. One other thing to note is Luffy's middle initial, D. Yes, it may seem very trivial at this point in the anime, but it becomes very important later down the line, so remember that for later. This scene is also very important for Koby. When Luffy is about to be attacked, Koby cowers in fear, not for himself, but for Luffy. You get the impression that he's seen a lot of innocent people die while he's worked under Alvida, and he doesn't want to see it again. While Koby's cowardice can get annoying at times, this scene really illustrates why he's so afraid of Alvida and her crew. Even after Luffy scares off the pirates, Koby is adamant that Luffy is no match for Alvida. Luffy refuses to listen and makes his way to the food stores on the ship. As Luffy stuffs his face with apples, he asks Koby if there are any smaller boats on the cruise ship. Very briefly, Luffy explains that his own ship got caught in the large whirlpool. Unfortunately, he never tells us why he was in the barrel in the first place. I'll return to that in a bit, but this does bring up a major point about Luffy. As Koby stated earlier, if Luffy was indeed caught in that whirlpool, he should be dead. Luffy doesn't seem to think anything of it, but the truth of the matter is that Luffy is incredibly lucky. Throughout the course of this anime, we'll see Luffy in numerous different life-threatening situations, and against all odds, he seems to pull through. I'll delve into this a bit further on in the retrospective, but for now, just remember that Luffy is a very lucky guy. Luffy next asks Koby if he's one of the pirates or one of the passengers on the cruise ship. Koby explains how he went out one day to go fishing and accidentally wound up on a pirate ship. You can tell that these 2 years have been torture for poor Koby. Living on a pirate ship is not easy, especially if you are a cabin boy. As I said before, Koby must have seen many innocent people lose their lives while he worked as a slave. That sort of experience is enough to break the will of any ordinary man. And with the knowledge of all the pain and anguish that Koby has been through, Luffy promptly calls Koby an idiot. Now, while Luffy is being rather insensitive here, he does have a point. Koby could have run away at any time, but he doesn't because he's so afraid of what Alvida might do to him if she finds out. Luffy just can't understand this reasoning though. Luffy is incredibly confident and isn't afraid of anyone. Luffy wouldn't run from Alvida, and so he doesn't think that Koby should run from Alvida either. Luffy may not have phrased it very tactfully, but this is what Koby needs to hear right now. If Koby is ever going to get over his cowardice, he needs someone to challenge his way of thinking and set him on the right path. Back on the main deck, Alvida's crew transfers the treasure over to the pirate ship, only to have Orange Hair steal it right from under their noses. While this is happening, the pirates from earlier report to Alvida that there's a monster down below. Down in the hold, Koby starts to agree with Luffy. He mentions that there's something he would like to do if he were only brave enough to do so. It's clear that his experience with Alvida caused him to give up on a dream that he once had. To get his mind off his forgotten dream, he asks Luffy why he set sail. As I mentioned earlier, Gold Roger was once considered the Pirate King. In order to acquire such a title, one has to completely conquer the oceans and become the strongest pirate in the world. This is not a claim that you can make lightly. Saying you're going to be Pirate King is the equivalent of making the entire world your enemy. The title of Pirate King is not something a person can just bestow upon you because it's not really an official title. It's something that you have to go out and earn for yourself. You have to go out into the world and make the world acknowledge that you are indeed the Pirate King. For Luffy to say this so nonchalantly, especially when he doesn't even have a crew yet, is utterly ridiculous, and Kobe calls him out on it, saying that it's impossible. In response to this, Luffy promptly punches Kobe in the back of the head. And to Kobe, I bequeath upon you a boot to the head.
And one for Jenny and the Wimp.
Once again, we have a conflicting set of beliefs. Kobe believes that Luffy's goal is impossible. In Kobe's mind, even if Luffy had a crew, a ship, and the power to take on the rest of the world, there's still hundreds of other pirates out there who share the same dream. Luffy, on the other hand, doesn't care about any of this. He has a dream, and he won't let anybody get in the way of it. It may seem impossible to everyone else, but that doesn't matter. One major thing to note here is that when Luffy talks about his dream, he's looking down at his straw hat. The significance of the hat won't be explained until later, but it's clearly connected to his dream. With that being said, Luffy walks off to find another boat. Notice that, once again, Luffy refuses to judge the pirates. Even though they attacked him, he still believes that they could be good people and could possibly help him on his journey. Before he can leave, Kobe asks him a question. With this speech, you can see that Luffy is starting to have an effect on Kobe. He reveals that his dream is to become a marine, and that he's always wanted to catch pirates like Alvida. This helps to explain why Kobe gave up on his dream in the first place. In addition to the countless atrocities he witnessed firsthand, he could also see that he did not have the strength to capture Alvida. Considering Alvida is one of the weakest pirates in One Piece, you can see why Kobe thinks his dream is impossible. And yet, when Luffy shows his passion and dedication to his own dream, Kobe's mindset begins to change. If Luffy can stick with his dream, then why can't he? He loudly announces that he will become a marine and he'll capture Alvida with his own strength. It's really interesting that Kobe, who wants to capture pirates, asks Luffy if he has what it takes to be a marine. Kobe doesn't view Luffy as a pirate. Well, not exactly. Luffy may refer to himself as such, but he certainly doesn't act like a normal pirate. This idea will be explored later on in the anime, but it's something to think about. Unfortunately, Kobe's burst of confidence is cut short when Alvida crashes through the ceiling. Now, this is a very small point, but I never understood why the pirates stabbed through the door like this. They clearly aren't aiming for Luffy because they don't even come close to hitting him. For a while, I thought they were meant to trap Luffy in the room with Alvida, but that doesn't explain why some of them come out of the wall. Again, it's a very small point, but it just seems silly to me. Anyway, Alvida looks over at Luffy and says something quite interesting. Earlier in this episode, Alvida showed interest when she heard that a certain bounty hunter might be on the ship. That bounty hunter is Roronoa Zoro, who is famous for hunting down pirates who have high bounties. While he doesn't appear in this episode, Zoro is mentioned at least 3 times during it. This is excellent foreshadowing for the character, and it makes us wonder just who this Zoro person really is. I'll touch more upon him in a bit. With the knowledge that Luffy is not the pirate hunter, Alvida decides that Luffy isn't a threat and simply ignores him. Instead, she turns to Kobe and demands his allegiance. Alvida is pissed and wildly attacks Luffy, but Luffy is too fast for her. He takes Koby up to the main deck, where Alvida's crew is waiting. Without hesitation, Luffy begins to single-handedly fight off Alvida's crew. This scene is meant to show off Luffy's fighting prowess, but it also serves another purpose. Throughout the entire scene, Luffy is showing off to Koby. He goes into the fight smiling and takes out each pirate with little effort. At one point, he even holds up his arm to show off his muscle. This is Luffy showing Koby that anyone can fight for their dreams. Strength of will is just as powerful as physical strength. If Koby's will was stronger, he could have escaped Alvida by now. This is something Koby needs to see, and Luffy is showing it with every punch he throws. It's also worth noting that Luffy didn't start taking down the pirates until Alvida attacked him. Luffy didn't fight until he was directly provoked. This ties into another aspect of his character. He'll take down pirates if he's provoked or his friends are hurt, but he won't start a fight. This is one of my favorite aspects of Luffy, and it makes him unique among shonen heroes. Another big development in this scene is when Luffy is attacked from behind. Luffy dodges the attack without even looking. Luffy's fighting prowess alludes to previous training, but this takes it a step further. This implies that Luffy has been through more than just ordinary training. We don't get an answer to this until much later down the line, but remember this for later. Now, this scene reveals even more about Luffy. First of all, he isn't taking the fight seriously at all. He was mopping the floor with the pirates earlier, and now he's flat out playing around. His power is leagues beyond these ordinary pirates. Alvida and her crew don't pose a threat to Luffy, so he doesn't even need to try. In addition to that, we learn that Luffy is no ordinary human. His arm can stretch to extraordinary lengths, much like Mr. Fantastic or Plastic Man. And here we have yet another revelation. Luffy ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi, which basically translates to the rubber fruit. Because of this, Luffy's entire body is now made of rubber, and he can stretch it at will. This brings up something of a continuity error. Earlier in the episode, when Luffy was attacked by the two pirates, they tried to stab him with their swords. Rubber is incredibly durable, but it can be cut. So how is he able to break both the blades? I can see two possible explanations here. First, Luffy could have hit the swords on their flat end, avoiding the blade entirely. This doesn't seem very likely though, because the blades end up lodged in the ceiling afterwards. The only other explanation is that the swords were so dull that they couldn't cut him in the first place. I think the second explanation is a bit more plausible, but it still seems very silly for pirates to walk around with such dull blades. It's also important to note that Alvida refers to this as a devil fruit. Devil fruit are a major aspect of the world of One Piece, but there is little concrete information on the fruit itself. Now, personally, I love the way that Oda introduces the devil fruit. It's not an exposition dump like many shows usually use. It's a concept that is calmly brought up in conversation. The dialogue feels natural, and nothing is revealed about the fruit itself. All we're told is that devil fruit exist, and they can give you superpowers. That's all we really need with this scene. It establishes the core concept of the fruit and leaves us wanting to know more. The mystery of the devil fruit is an enticing one, and Oda wisely chose to reveal only small snippets of information about the devil fruit as the series progressed. I'll touch more upon the devil fruit later down the line, but for now, just remember that this is a strange fruit that can grant superpowers.
Yo ho ho, he took a bite of gum gum.
In these early episodes, Luffy is constantly searching for a crew to join him on his quest to find the treasure of One Piece. While Luffy is not certain exactly what kind of people he wants on his crew, he always always says that he wants 10 core crew members. This may seem a bit trivial at first, but let's think about this for a second. Pirate crews are usually quite large, aren't they? I mean, I've rarely seen a pirate crew with less than 20 people before. Operating a ship is hard work, even for a small crew, so it's odd that Luffy would only need 10 people. Also, in order to become Pirate King, Luffy has to defeat all of the other pirates that stand in his way. Yes, he can take on Alvida's crew single-handed, but it's not going to be that easy to take on the stronger pirates with only a handful of people. On the other hand, quantity is not always better than quality. If Luffy chooses amazing people to join his crew, he won't need 30 people. I'll touch more upon this concept in the next arc, but keep that in mind for the time being. Koby starts to tell Luffy to run, but then he remembers what Luffy said down in the hold. Remembering Luffy's courage, Koby musters up all of his determination and tells off Alvida once and for all. It's clear that Luffy has had a very profound effect on young Koby. At the beginning of the episode, Koby was completely submissive and was too afraid to stand up to even the weaker pirates on Alvida's ship. Now, after all that Luffy has said about his own dreams, Koby has gathered the courage to fight back. Sure, Koby doesn't have the strength to defeat Alvida right this second, but now that he has the will to fight, he will soon be able to get the strength to fight, and that is really important. One of the major themes in One Piece is overcoming the impossible through sheer willpower. In this episode, Koby once believed it impossible for Luffy to take on 3 ordinary pirates. Now, with a little prodding from Luffy, Koby stands up against Alvida, something he thought equally impossible. The point is, if Koby's willpower was stronger 2 years ago, he wouldn't have remained a prisoner on Alvida's ship. Sure, he may have gotten injured or beaten up, but he would have escaped eventually. The problem wasn't that Koby didn't have the power to take on Alvida. No. The problem was that Koby's will was weak, and he allowed himself to be beaten. Even if he was physically not strong enough to escape, he could have trained in secret, bulked up, or just done something in order to make himself capable of escaping from Alvida. This theme will come up very frequently in One Piece, but personally, I think this is one of the best uses of the theme. It's not about Koby standing up to impossible odds, it's about Koby standing up to something he thinks is impossible and ultimately standing up for himself. This small scene contains quite a bit of subtext. First of all, we can see that Luffy is pleased that he got through to Koby. All Luffy really wanted was for Koby to stand up for himself, and he certainly accomplishes that in this scene. At the same time, Luffy realizes that Koby isn't strong enough to take on Alvida right now, so the moment that Alvida starts to attack, he pushes Koby out of the way. However, the most important thing in the scene is what Luffy says to Koby. Well said. Now, most One Piece fans will probably look at this and say that Luffy is referring to Koby's speech about capturing Alvida, but I'm not so sure. If you look closely at the scene, you'll notice that it focuses very closely on Koby's inner thoughts right before Luffy steps in. Now, it may seem silly, but Luffy's well-said comment might be in direct reference to Koby's thoughts here. If so, this is foreshadowing something that happens hundreds of episodes down the line. I won't spoil the revelation for those of you who haven't gone that far in the anime, but keep this scene in the back of your mind for the time being. Well, anyway, Alvida whacks Luffy with her signature iron mace, but Luffy isn't affected at all. This makes sense considering the fact that rubber is great at absorbing kinetic energy. Blunt force doesn't hurt Luffy at all, which gives him a huge advantage over his enemies. Their punches won't affect him, but his hurt twice as hard. And so Luffy stretches back his arm and delivers the king of all punches. With Alvida defeated, Luffy demands that the remaining pirates give Koby a ship. This shows that Luffy isn't selfish. There are times where Luffy is a bit self-centered, but he's always thinking of the needs of his friends first. He gets Koby a boat before he gets one for himself. This is yet another reason why Luffy is simply awesome. It's a bit too early to celebrate though, because the Marines have finally arrived on the scene. Since Luffy is a pirate and Koby worked for Alvida for 2 years, the Marines don't seem the friendliest of people at the moment. It's also interesting to note that the Marines aren't shown as heroes in this episode. They arrive too late to be of any use to the passengers, and they fire on a defenseless ship. Seriously, they almost hit the cruise ship. Where was that cannonball aiming for? I'll touch upon the Marines more in the next story arc, but this introduction does not paint them in a very positive light. Meanwhile, we see that Orange Hair has gathered up Alvida's treasure and is setting sail on a ship of her own. Now, this meeting between Orange Hair and Luffy is simply the best scene in the episode. There are no words. We don't need them. There is much more said from their expressions alone than you can say with mere words. This scene won't be explained for quite a while, but it foreshadows numerous things that will happen later on in the series. I'll explain it all when we get there, but just remember this scene for later. I know, I've been saying that a lot, but there is a lot of information given to us in this one episode and a lot of foreshadowing. It's important to note that the Grand Line is briefly mentioned here. Koby refers to it as the graveyard of pirates, and yet this is a place that Luffy is headed towards without fear. The Grand Line will be explored a bit more in the next arc, but we get the impression that this is a place filled with endless danger. Still, if Luffy is going to become the Pirate King, he has to conquer the Grand Line, no matter how tough. We can see here that finding a pirate crew is an important part of Luffy's dream. He's not just looking for anybody to join. He's looking for people who are strong enough to support his dream and serve under him. Also, he's only looking for people with ideals that match his own. He says that he'll ask Zoro to join his crew if he's a good person. He doesn't even consider the fact that Zoro has a reputation of hunting down pirates. Luffy just wants to see for himself if Zoro is a good person or not. And with that, the Alvida arc and the first episode comes to an end. I suppose I should also comment on the first ending theme of the series. It's just okay. Personally, I don't really see anything too special about it. It's slow and heartfelt, but the singer isn't really that great, and the visuals are static and boring. It's not bad per se, but it certainly doesn't hold up when compared to the opening theme song. On the other hand, the English version of the ending theme is certainly an improvement. Honestly, the biggest problem with the Japanese version is how high and squeaky the singer sounds, kind of like a mouse in a blender. The English version tones that down quite a bit to great effect. It's still not my favorite ending theme, but it is a big improvement. Personally, I think the Alvida arc is one of the better arcs of the East Blue Saga. While it only lasts a single episode, it introduces several concepts that will be utilized later down the line. The comedy is a tad silly at times, but it always makes me laugh, especially when Luffy calls Alvida fat. Now that, to me, is just hilarious. The background music is simply perfect. Every single tune fits the mood of the scene and the tone of the series overall. There weren't any real standout tracks, but there was nothing that really took me out of the episode. The animation may put some people off at first, especially since this was made back in 1999, but it isn't bad per se. There are times when the character models are completely static and only their mouths move, but this can happen even with today's animation. It's clear that most of the animation budget went into the fight scene, but while the fight isn't as fast-paced as anime fights usually are, it does a great job of showing off Luffy's fighting prowess, and it's really entertaining. There are 2 points in the episode where the animation is used stylistically. The first is when Alvida's crew board the cruise ship and start attacking. The animation slows down and we see a still shot of the pirates with speed lines all around them. Some people might see this as poor animation, but I personally thought that it gave a bit more intensity to the attack. The other point is when Luffy is about to punch Alvida, and we see a few snapshots of him the second before his punch connects. This is a definite stylistic choice, and it gives a bit more weight to the punch itself. It slows down the fight for a split second and gives us a few moments to appreciate the sheer force of the attack itself. Yes, the animation can look goofy at times, but I wish more animators would use stylistic effects like these in their anime, because personally I do appreciate them. One thing to note about Alvida is that she was named after the Scandinavian pirate Alvida, who dressed up like a man in order to become a pirate, since women weren't really allowed on pirate ships back in the day. In addition to Alvida, there are numerous other characters in the world of One Piece who are based on pirate legends. Oda grew up admiring these pirates and researched them extensively when he began to work on One Piece. While not all of the characters look or behave like their real-life counterparts, it's clear that Oda respects and admires these legendary pirates. As a villain, though, Alvida the Iron Mace is just okay. It's interesting that she was based on a Scandinavian pirate, but that doesn't come through in her design. She looks utterly ridiculous, especially when she first appears, and it's somewhat hard to take her seriously. On the other hand, she's leagues better than the two villains from the Romance Dawn one-shots, and she actually does come across as intimidating. Alvida relies on brute force and fear to run her crew. Her fighting ability is rather limited, but she is pretty strong if she can lift up that giant iron mace with one hand. I think the biggest problem with Alvida, though, is that she lacks charisma. She doesn't have any real motivation or goals beyond looting ships and gathering treasure. Yes, pirates are supposed to go after treasure, but there's more to a pirate than just treasure. The Alvida thinks she's beautiful joke is rather funny, but she's rather forgettable in the long run. Honestly, she's the weakest part of the arc, and better off forgotten. One of the best developments in this arc was the juxtaposition between Luffy and Kobe. Luffy is carefree and energetic, whereas Kobe is whiny and depressed. Luffy has an incredibly strong will, whereas Kobe is a coward. Luffy is a pirate, and Kobe wants to be a marine. They are perfect opposites in every way. The dynamic between these two characters works really well, and you can see exactly why Luffy has an influence on Kobe. Kobe has a very distinct character arc in this episode. He starts off as a coward, and with Luffy's help, slowly works up the courage to face his fears and chase after his dreams. He isn't completely changed at the end of the episode, but he does come out stronger because of this experience. Kobe will only continue to grow in the next story arc. Luffy, on the other hand, remains quite static throughout the episode. We learn a lot about Luffy's character here, but he doesn't really change because he doesn't really need to. Luffy is the hero that the world of One Piece desperately needs. He has interesting ideals and beliefs, but he's fun-loving and carefree. He has the willpower and determination to stick to his dreams, and he has the power to back it up. At no point during the fight scenes did Luffy even have to try. As time goes on, we will get an idea for just how strong he really is, but at this point in the series, it's a complete mystery, and this mystery entices you to see more of his character in action. The Japanese seiyuu for both Luffy and Koby turn in great performances. Luffy is voiced by Mayumi Tanaka, who is best known for her roles as Krillin in Dragon Ball and Pazu in Castle in the Sky. She does an excellent job of capturing Luffy's energy without making him annoying, and she showcases Luffy's passion quite well. Koby is voiced by Mika Doi, who is known for her roles as numerous side characters such as Alisa in Cowboy Bebop and Takane Megumi in Rurouni Kenshin. Doi really gets across the nervousness and fervor of Koby. The rest of the cast is pretty solid, with Alvida having the best voice out of the secondary characters. Seriously, despite her bland character, I absolutely love her voice. Alvida is voiced by Matsuoka Yoko, and she is simply awesome. From what I could find out, she's voiced some minor roles in anime and voiced the Japanese dub of Janeway from Star Trek. Seriously though, she needs to be in more anime because she has a good commanding voice. As for the dub, it's really quite solid, all things considered. All of the background characters turn in convincing performances that sounded natural to the world of the show. While I did recognize Justin Cook in the background as one of the pirates who attacked Luffy in the beginning, I think they all did a great job of behaving naturally and sounding like they belonged to this environment. And really, we could all use a little bit more Justin Cook in any anime, to be fair. The main cast, on the other hand, is rather mixed. I feel like Colleen Clinkenbeard took a while to really step into Luffy's shoes, to be perfectly honest. While she's voiced Luffy for quite a while before this point, as they dubbed Sky Island first, it took her a while to really grow on me. To be perfectly honest, she was one of the problems I had when the dub switched over to Funimation. Like, she's not bad, she just sounds like she's forcing the Luffy voice at times when she's yelling. Granted, my opinion has changed over the years, and as of the recent One Piece films, I think Colleen has really improved to the point where she really is fantastic in the role. Luffy is just not an easy person to voice, to be perfectly honest. Hell, Colleen said that voicing Luffy for so many years has permanently changed her natural voice. That should show you how difficult a role this is. So, while I still think her performance is a bit rough around the edges in this episode, she does get better later down the line. With that being said, I think Leah Clark is a great fit for Koby. Out of the three main characters, I think Leah fits the role the most in this episode. She perfectly embodies the nervous nature of Koby and is able to show the character arc quite well. I look forward to seeing more of Leah in the future as the show continues. Unfortunately, the weak link of the main three is Lori Steele as Alvida. In the sub, Alvida's seiyuu is my favorite because of the voice she brings to the table, but Lori is just a bad fit for the character in my humble opinion. She's not a bad actress, but her voice should be far deeper and more intimidating to make this character work. Alvida loses a lot of her intimidation factor in the dub, and that really is a shame. Still, everyone else is quite solid, so thus far I think the Funimation dub is leagues better than the 4Kids dub. Although, that's not saying much. Another thing that really works in this arc is the use of silence. For the first 8 minutes or so, there's little to no dialogue. The majority of these opening scenes are told through the characters' reactions and expressions. This is the very definition of show don't tell. We are shown how the characters react to things, so we don't have to be specifically told. I really wish they did this more in anime because this approach made the rest of the episode have much more impact. In terms of the manga, there are a few things that were changed for the anime version of One Piece. In the manga, orange hair was not introduced until the third story arc, meaning all of her scenes in this episode were created solely for the anime. Now, I actually really like this change. This helps introduce us to her character early on, and helps to explain a few things that will happen in the Buggy and Arlong arcs. This episode also serves to flesh out her character. She's a thief, and a skilled one at that. She's able to fool the passengers on the cruise ship into believing she's an aristocrat, and she's strong enough to take out some of Alvida's men. Earlier in this video, I drew attention to the fact that Orange Hair was staring at a specific island in the distance. If you paid close attention to the video like I asked, you could see that this is the same island that Alvida's ship hides behind before the attack. My theory is that Orange Hair knew that Alvida was going to attack this specific ship. I'm not quite sure how she knew, but it would certainly explain why she wasn't panicking when the pirates attacked, and why she was wearing her thief clothes under her dress. If she knew Alvida was going to attack, she could have planned to be on this ship and use the attack as a diversion to steal Alvida's treasure. This theory is further supported by what we will learn in the Arlong arc. Another thing to note is that this episode actually takes place during the second chapter of the manga, while the events of the first chapter are withheld until episode 4. I'm going to talk about this further when we reach episode 4, but I will say this. In the manga, we're introduced to Luffy right away. We're shown his past, his role model, and learn why he wants to be the Pirate King. In the anime, Luffy is mysterious. We don't know anything about his past, but we're able to gather information on his character by simply observing him in action. I think both methods work equally well, but personally I enjoy the anime adaptation a little more. The mystery of Luffy's character makes you want to learn more about him, much like the introduction of Orange Hair. It also helps that we don't actually see Luffy until 8 minutes into the episode. The episode keeps focusing on this mystery barrel, and we don't know the significance until Luffy pops out of it. It's a really great buildup of tension and works for Luffy's introduction. It's also interesting to note that the structure of this episode of the anime is very similar to the structure of the Romance Dawn one-shots. Speaking of the mystery barrel, there are a few things from the manga that I wish were kept in the anime. In the manga, it explains a bit better how Luffy ended up in the barrel. We see Luffy's boat caught in the whirlpool as he tries to figure a way out of the situation. We also see that there's a barrel in the boat, and it's implied that Luffy jumped into the barrel in order to survive the whirlpool. Yes, it is a bit silly, but I wish they had shown this in a flashback, because in the anime, they never tell us why he was in the barrel in the first place. Also, in the manga, Oda explains why Alvida keeps Kobe around. It's true that cabin boys can be useful, but Kobe is a coward. On any normal pirate ship, he would be killed within a week if he didn't have any useful skills. In the manga, Alvida clearly states that if it wasn't for Kobe's vast knowledge of the seas, she would have killed him long ago. I really wish they had kept this in the anime, because it helps to further flesh out both Kobe's and Alvida's character, and it gives Kobe a defining character trait. There are a few other changes here or there, but nothing too major. With all of that being said, the Alvida arc was a great start for One Piece. It may have had a few problems here and there, but it did an excellent job of introducing us to the vast world of One Piece. As this retrospective continues, we will delve further into the minds of the complex characters and see just how strange and wonderful this world really is. Get ready, everyone, because next time we take a look at the Captain Morgan arc and witness the awesomeness that is Roronoa Zoro. Do the Zen. Hashtag fuck Toei, fuck Toei, fuck Toei, fuck Toei. Okay, I feel good. Fuck Toei.